After decades of being told UFO people were crazy, after years of blurred images, congressional hearings, military pilots, and government officials saying, we don't know what this is, the government finally turns around and says, fine, here's the UFO files. So naturally, everyone's first question is, are aliens real? But I think there's a better question, a more uncomfortable question. Why now? Why release the material this way? Through a government pipeline, after decades of denial, mockery, secrecy, and nothing to see over here. Because maybe the real story isn't what's in the files. Maybe the real story is how the story is being released. This might be disclosure, or it might be narrative control, wearing a little alien mask and waving at us behind a government website. Today we're talking about the UFO files, the alien.gov weirdness, and the possibility we're not watching disclosure happen. We might be watching disclosure get managed. So before the UFO archive launched, the White House reportedly registered two very interesting government domains, alien.gov and aliens.gov. That happened in March of 26. Now on one hand, that could be totally normal. If the government's preparing for a public-facing UFO archive, you might register some obvious domains to keep scammers and pranksters and foreign actors from grabbing them first. Now, while that's probably partly true, it's also very boring. I mean, come on. You register aliens.gov and expect the internet not to lose its mind? That's kind of like walking into a Waffle House at 3 a.m. wearing a Bigfoot costume and saying, please don't speculate. Of course people are going to speculate. This wasn't just a quiet document dump in some dusty archive no one visits. This was branded, it was public, and it was coordinated. It involved multiple agencies including the White House, NASA, and the FBI. It also says more files will be released on a rolling basis. That matters, because rolling basis means drip feed, and drip feed is not the same as here's everything, have at it. Drip feed means pacing, pacing means control. Control means somebody's deciding what comes next, when it comes out, how it's framed, and what the public is to chew on next. And that brings us to the main theory, controlled disclosure. That doesn't mean fake disclosure. It doesn't mean every file is planted. It doesn't mean the government's sitting in a bunker with aliens playing Uno. It means something very simple. The government may be releasing information in a managed way to shape public reaction. And honestly, that wouldn't be very shocking. Governments manage sensitive information all the time. Military information, intelligence, national security. They manage messaging around crises, wars, disease, classified programs, all that good stuff. Why would UFOs be any different? These types of releases are powerful because they shape the story before the public even knows what questions to ask. Here's another possibility. This release may be a pressure valve. Think about it. For years, public interest in UAPs has been building. You had Navy videos, pilots talking, congressional hearings. You had people asking why the government knows so much but says so little. At some point, if you keep everything locked down, suspicion grows. People start thinking if there's nothing there, then why are they hiding it? So what do? You release something. Not everything, but something. Enough to say, look at how transparent we are. Enough to calm down some critics. Enough to overwhelm some researchers with mountains of material. Enough to let the public argue with itself. Because once the files are public, the government can say, we release the information, the public can judge. It sounds so democratic, but it moves the fight out of the government's hands and into public chaos. Now researchers, skeptics, believers, debunkers, journalists, everybody can start slicing up the files. Everybody sees what they want to see. If you're a skeptic, you see some blurry dots. If you're a believer, you see confirmation. The military analyst sees drones. The conspiracy theorists see a rollout. And the government gets to say, we gave you the files. Pressure's released, narratives diffused, mission accomplished. And here's the obvious conspiracy angle. This is a distraction. Anytime the government releases anything, the immediate response is, what are they trying to distract us from? It gets overused a lot. Not every weird story is a distraction. Sometimes weird things just happen at the same time as some other weird things are happening, but the theory sticks around for a reason. UFOs are one of the few topics that cut across all political lines. Left, right, independent, religious, secular, rural, urban. Everybody will at least glance at that headline. It's one of the few things the government has that captures the entire populace. So yeah, if you want to distract the public, this is a pretty good way to do it. But here's the twist. It doesn't have to be a distraction from one specific thing. It can be a distraction from trust collapse in general. When people don't trust institutions, sometimes they have to win that trust back. And you can do that with some transparency. But if it feels like it's selective, it can have the opposite effect and make people even more suspicious. So the government may just be trying to say, see, look at how open we are. And the public hears, why weren't you open before now? And that's the trap. Once you admit there were files worth releasing, people naturally wonder what else exists, what else is still classified. Who exactly decided what files to release? Why this one and not that one? Why do I want to get this document? Why not the raw sensor data? Why give us the mystery but not the context? That's where the distraction theory turns into something more serious. Because even if this isn't a distraction from some specific scandal, it may still be a way to redirect public curiosity into a controlled maze. Last, but certainly not least, I could not do this type of video without at least mentioning Project Bluebeam. On the off chance there's someone unfamiliar with the Project Bluebeam, it's an old conspiracy theory that one day the governments or global elites are going to fake a government or religious event using advanced tech to manipulate the public. Now, is there actually any evidence this is actually happening? No. At least not in the way it's usually presented. But as a story device, it refuses to die and taps into a very real fear. What happens when technology is good enough to fake reality? Because we're already kind of seeing that. Look at how far AI has come in a very short time frame. Now imagine that, but holographic. Suddenly you have massive psyops and information warfare. You could show somebody anything, and they would believe it because it looks real. Even without a literal fake alien invasion, we are entering a time where people cannot easily trust what they see. So naturally, when the government officially starts releasing UFO material, the blue beam crowd immediately says, see, they're priming us over here. And that's why the raw data matters here. Not just the clip, not the screenshot, not an edited video. We need sensor data, metadata, scientific review, because without that, people aren't really arguing over evidence. They're just kind of arguing over vibes. And UFO vibes are dangerous because they're addictive. A blurry dot can become whatever somebody wants it to be. And that's the magic. It's also the problem. So what's most likely going on here? The most likely truth is probably messy. Some UAP cases are probably misidentified normal objects, like birds. Some are probably sensor glitches or camera artifacts. Some are drones. Some are classified American systems. Some of it's probably genuinely unexplained because the data is too limited. And maybe, just maybe, a tiny percentage is something stranger. But the existence of unexplained cases does not automatically prove aliens. The lack of proof of aliens doesn't mean that there's nothing more important here. That's the middle ground. And the middle ground is where it gets interesting. Because even if there are no aliens, the government's handling of the UFO subject still matters. The secrecy matters, the timing matters, the branding matters, and the public reaction matters. And the fact that the official agencies are now treating this as serious after decades of ridicule, that matters too. Maybe the conspiracy is just that the government learned how to release mystery itself as a product. A little transparency, a little ambiguity, a little bit of national security, a little spectacle, a little bit of you decide. It's pretty powerful. Because when the public has incomplete information, the people fill in the blanks themselves. And whoever controls the blanks controls the story. So are the UFO files disclosure? Maybe. Are they a distraction? Possibly. Are they a controlled government narrative? Honestly, that's probably the safest bet. Because the files are real. The questions are real. The unknowns are real. But the release isn't neutral. Nothing involving intelligence agencies, military footage, classified records, and alien.gov domains is truly neutral. It's not just a file dump. It's a stage, and everyone's being invited to watch. Maybe the government's finally opening the door. Maybe they're only cracking enough for us to argue about what's on the other side. Maybe the biggest secret is what they can make us believe with just enough evidence to keep us guessing. Because in the end, they didn't release the UFO files. They released uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the most powerful tools that there is. The question isn't only whether or not there's something in the sky. The question is who benefits from keeping it unidentified. And that, my friends, is where the real rabbit hole starts.